Hey everyone, Greg Mescall here from USA Water Polo. Thanks for joining us here. We have a great conversation on the way. This is the start of a 2-week series that we're calling Why We Play. And we're talking with people all across water polo, other sports, all about touching on the reasons why we play water polo, the things that we do to help grow this sport and take part in other sports as well, as we'll touch on next week. We start off with a great conversation today. This is all about growing water polo in the Americas, right? So we often tell you about what's happening in USA water polo, but we are fortunate enough to be joined by representatives from 4 other water polo countries today that are going to tell us a bit about what's going on water polo wise in their country, how their sport is growing, how it's developing, all of those great things. So joining us here as we look down around your Facebook Live or your Zoom screen, it's all virtual these days. We're thrilled to have, first up, Oliver Alvarez from Mexico joining us. Appreciate him being here. Carlos Steffens from Puerto Rico. USA fans will know Carlos from the stands, cheering on his daughters Maggie and Jessica with Team USA. From Argentina, Facundo Policarpo. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly. And then also representing El Salvador, James Vasquez and Yanira Vasquez as well joining us. Appreciate all of you being here. Thanks so much for taking the time. We're going to start off first, I think, because many of our fans may not have a sense about water polo in your countries. Just give us an idea. And Oliver, I'll start with you first in Mexico. Just give us a sense of where water polo stands in your country. How does it rank amongst the other sports, and where do you feel like it kind of fits in the sports world?
Hi, Greg. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here with talking about water polo with all of you guys. To answer your question, water polo in Mexico is really barely exists. We have been struggling for many, many years, trying to send players abroad. Me, myself, I went to play to Spain for 4 years. I've been going with a lot of to a lot of tournaments with the national team for many years as well. And recently, I just started to work with the Mexican National Swing Federation to try and make a difference in the structure, into trying to help us having a competing system, because we don't have it. So, and therefore, since water polo is not a very popular sport worldwide, especially not here in Mexico, where sports are really not that important in a big picture. We obviously play every sport, but we don't play it at a professional level, even at a college level. So it's very difficult for a country to develop any sport if sports aren't really taken in a serious matter. So we play, we make the best out of it. We try to always give our best effort. And right now, my job is to try to get some funding into sponsorships and put a little bit of marketing into water polo and try to give it a different perspective so that we can get private investments. Because actually, sincerely, with a government support, which is very little, it would be very difficult to develop our sports. So we are struggling right now, especially with this pandemic. I was supposed to start a series of events this year, but things happen. This is not in anybody's control. So we have to postpone it for at least a year, I guess, because we haven't had any news about when are we restarting or starting activities again. So it's kind of a bit frustrating for everybody, but I think everybody's at the same position. So struggling, trying to give water polo a new face, a different face, with a real program and a real plan. So kind of hard, but we're starting from the bottom right now.
Well, certainly appreciate you sharing that. I think, and all of us will touch on this at some point, right? Nothing like a pandemic to really slow your efforts to try and grow something and hold tournaments and events. That's something really plaguing so many sports, but especially a growing one like water polo. And really everyone on here, right? Water polo is likely not the number one thing in every country. No, it's not the number one thing in the US. So there are those challenges to try and grow it. Carlos, I'll talk to you now about Puerto Rico. I know there have been other infrastructure challenges, right, in Puerto Rico over the last couple of years you've worked to remedy, but tell us about where the sport of water polo is in an area that we know you hold dear to your heart.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. This is a very important meeting for me. I'd love to help South America, water polo, Central America. It's been a magic sport for me and my family. You know that. I've played in all those 4 countries in different competitions. Mexico, many times. Pan American Games, 1975. San Salvador, CSCAN or H group, 12 and under. I don't know, in the 60s, sometimes 70, I don't know. Argentina, I played in Mendoza in the police pool. They didn't believe I played water polo. I was in the import-export business. I played, a lot of fun 20 years ago or so. So, Puerto Rico, when I played, we had like 12, 14 teams. Right now, I'm not too sure. We have 2, 3 teams. We're doing everything we can. We had, you guys, this is a pandemic, but we've had hurricanes. When I first moved there to help, we had a government issue where they replaced our governor. That was another issue. And now with the pandemic, forget it. I mean, this has been a very, very complex situation. We have a group that maybe Alvarez, you're aware of it, that he's trying to do something with water polo. He had a group. I understand there is a group from Encantada that is trying to do Zoom with some countries, including Mexico or Jalisco. I don't know, Alvarez, if you've been part of it, I don't know. But it's very challenging. So Puerto Rico is baseball, to answer your question, Greg, baseball, boxing, basketball, but FIFA have done an amazing job. And we have lost even baseball players to soccer. During the hurricane, that we had no energy for some of us, I didn't have a problem, but some of them, most of the pools didn't have energy for more than 4, 5, 6 months. And some of them have not ever opened since that. That was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. FIFA donated money and, they gave plant energy and so forth, and we lost a lot of players from swimmers and water polo to soccer. It's a big competitor. But we're doing everything we can. I have some ideas that I guess I'm just going to answer your question about what position water polo is. I don't know. We have 100 players in Puerto Rico. Okay. When I played, Puerto Rico is a small country. We're 3 million people. I was looking at South America. We have 500,000 people in South America. That's the subject I want to talk to you about. And I want to help. But Puerto Rico right now, it's probably in the worst position I have ever seen. They have a pretty good team. We did very well in Barranquilla. I was helping a little bit there. But, I noticed what Alvarez mentioned. The level of water polo of South America and Central America has come down from when I played in the 70s. In fact, Mexico won in Mexico City, 1975. USA, second. Cuba, tied third. Canada, tied there. Puerto Rico lost to USA 7-4 in 1975, Pan American Games. Now, I think it's 20 goals difference. So this is a subject I want to talk about later. I hope I answer your question.
No, that's great. That's great. And we'll get into that. And you hit on something important. And, many people may already know this, right? But we have 4 countries here. Two that are larger, if you talk about your overall landmass, right, in Mexico and Argentina, and then 2 that are smaller in Puerto Rico and El Salvador. We'll go from Puerto Rico. I'll go down to Yanira and James. As far as El Salvador is concerned, a smaller nation like Puerto Rico, just that same thought, just kind of give us a sense of where water polo is in the country and where it's at in comparison to other sport opportunities.
Yes, thank you, Greg, and thank you again for the invitation. We were very excited to receive this and very, very enthusiastic that USA Water Polo is supportive of the development of the sport in the Americas. Let me start off with just one clarification. we do not formally represent water polo in El Salvador. So we go down there quite regularly. We've been involved with the swimming federation. We know all the relevant decision makers of water polo. We've been trying to get the sport just as a purely personal initiative off the ground for the past couple of years. We have a house down there. We're actually in California right now because we're not able to get down there. So just wanted to clarify that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. With respect to the relative standing of water polo in El Salvador, all I can really say is that the good news is it exists. That there are teams playing. There are both women and men and mixed teams. There seems to be a lot of interest. But in a nation of about 6 million people, I would think we're looking at about maybe 150 max players. And El Salvador, as you know, has a number of challenges that make it difficult for athletes to participate in sports. There's a limited number of swimming pools. In San Salvador, there are probably only 2 pools, maybe 3 that have water polo facilities.
Yeah, and open to the public because they're, most clubs have Olympic-sized pools, but they're not open. Open to the to the public,
And for a number of reasons, it's difficult for kids to travel. But there is a lot of interest, and I'm always very positively impressed by the quality of the play there, particularly on the women's side. I've seen a number of girls there that could quite easily compete for Division I scholarships if they wanted to. The problem is that the challenge is to just stack up one after another against the sport in El Salvador. There's the interest there, but there isn't the infrastructure. There isn't the resources to develop this. But the good news is that there's a lot of enthusiasm, and it's really tremendously inspiring to see these kids play, traveling, hours on a bus just to get to the pool to play, and then, risking their lives coming back at night, back to their homes. So tremendously inspiring. Obviously, a lot needs to be done. There was an opportunity a couple of years ago where the CSECAN tournament was going to be in El Salvador. But for a number of reasons, driven mainly by the Caribbean nations, they decided to cancel it because they felt that the situation in El Salvador was simply too risky. So what could have been a great opportunity to really gin up some interest in the sport there was lost, unfortunately. In terms of the good Central America teams, I think the best one is considered to be the Guatemala or Honduras.
Guatemala
Yeah.
is the one, right now. Yeah.
And again, the level of play is good. It could be a lot better, but just to summarize, there's a lot of interest. But in El Salvador, really, it's soccer and then everything else, basically. But we're optimistic, and hopefully we can, over the next couple of years, things will improve, and we really will get some things off the ground, particularly at the youth level, which is what we're most interested in. I'm sorry.
Just to tag along, from personally, I play water polo with the Soda Moms, and I stumble upon this wonderful group of ladies, and Janie's there, of course, Carlos, yeah. And so my interest is to try to bring, women's water polo to El Salvador, because as the sport has existed for many, many decades, it was only, the opportunity was only for men. So the women's team, as of about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, that's when we started being interested in that, and we found a group of girls who were very enthusiastic about it. So it's for women, the sport, it's pretty much in its infancy. So that's pretty much our drive there to really push for these wonderful sport for women, to give women the opportunity to play. So.
And it's incredible the effect of just really little things, like coming down there with a crate of USA water polo T-shirts, for example, distributing them. They love that, absolutely love it. And then their friends come because they may get a free T-shirt out of it, and suddenly they're involved in the sport. So a long way to go, unfortunately.
But never underestimate the power of a T-shirt. A free
Yes.
T-shirt has won many of us over the years. Last but not least, I'll turn to Facundo in Argentina. Just again, tell us about where water polo stands in your country in comparison to everything else, and where you feel like it might be headed.
Okay, Greg, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to take part on it, on this show, and thank you guys. And sorry so much for my English, which is quite poor, by the way, but I try to do my best to explain myself. If you have to interrupt me or just like, if it's not so clear, please do not hesitate on doing that, of course. So the situation in Argentina is like water polo is almost, it's not an exception as the rest of the world, maybe besides Eastern Europe countries. It's a really small sport. In Argentina, it's divided into maybe for like male sports. The number one and number two are definitely soccer, of course, and then basketball. And on the women's side, like I guess number one is field hockey, which is really popular down here. And secondly, maybe volleyball. Then there are like a lot of, especially collective sports, you know, team sports, like, I don't know, handball or baseball, basketball, football, or whatever. And aquatic sports is like, unfortunately, we struggle to like figure out a way to like solve it and get so much things like more played, you know, and famous and known everywhere. And among like aquatic sports, water polo, I think it's the second, but actually swimming is on top and definitely is much more popular, you know. There are like two big cities where water polo is played. One of them is Buenos Aires, which is the capital of the country, and the other one is 300 kilometers up north. Buenos Aires is Rosario. These two cities are the most important ones. Nevertheless, there are like some water polo areas in Patagonia in the south or Mendoza, as Carlos says, and yes, some other places in North Argentina. But actually, the formal competitions most of the teams are from these two cities. Maybe some like, okay, one team in Santa Fe, but mainly Buenos Aires and Rosario. Yeah. And we have a national league, which is like the big competition. It's like 10 months long with 10 teams. And then there are like second and third division. The second one is pretty interesting because there are like something like 38 teams or something. And the third one is just a local one in Buenos Aires with 10 or 12 teams. But this is all on the male side, because on the female side, unfortunately, we have just 4 teams in the whole country. Unfortunately, it's considered, between commas, you know, by the way, mostly a man's sports, you know. In the last decade, probably that's going to change, and it's changing, you know. It's like equality. I don't know how to say that. And like about gender is growing up, and we are like trying to figure out a way to solve it and fit this gap in between. I think there is still a lot of stuff to do to develop and promote and grow up. But in the last 10 years, both male and female sides, compared with years ago, the results in international tournaments and the amount of players and clubs is getting higher. Of course, step by step, and there is still a lot of stuff to do, but we are just trying to get up, you know?
Yeah, and I think you hit on a lot of things that everyone can relate to when you're trying to build something. You know, it's almost like trying to build a house, right? You can think about all these different things you have to work on, right? Every one of you listed a variety of challenges, right? Whether it's you know, government support or financial need or facilities or interest or equity, right? Among genders or among certain sports. There are no shortage of challenges. I think next as we kind of go around the group, and I'll go back to Mexico and Oliver, but is there a number one priority? So if you think about all these things that would help make water polo better in your country or help it grow, And I know some of them might feel like they're very far away, right? Like you need 20 more Olympic-sized pools in your country to really make a dent. We could all use those, right? That's a long-term goal. If you think about something you're trying to accomplish soon as kind of a number one priority, starting in Mexico first, what's kind of first on the list to work on?
Well, the first thing, to my point of view, is the water polo has to be united. There are like two different currents right now from people who used to play water polo at a high level, and another one that are the coaches that really are in charge of all the clubs. There aren't many clubs in Mexico. There must be about 10 to 12 clubs that really can sort of compete amongst them. But the thing is that we don't have a competitive system. And Mexico has come to like a sort of it's kind of viced because people just started to compete for one tournament a year, and they don't worry about older ages. I mean, for the people that have to go to a national team over 20 years old, they're for us. There's nothing for guys to keep on developing and growing. So the first need is that. I think the main part is to develop a competitive system, and then it has to come hand in hand with how do you say it? With the development of teachers, the way that teachers continue to teach the sport to the younger generations. That has been, I think, that one of the parts that we've struggled more, because there are not too many guys or girls, because we have a good competitive consistent girls. Well, not a system. There are many girl clubs but we need to be able to teach better the sports, and that's been a big problem. I think that one of the common things about our regions, our countries in Latin America, is that water polo in the world has developed a lot. It has evolved. I mean, it has changed so much in the rules and in the way the game is played, that we've stayed in the same level. We haven't evolved with that. And in Mexico's case, we do have pools. We have a lot of pools. Many pools, Olympic size, semi-Olympic, with a depth enough, good enough to play water polo, but it's not a need. I mean,
we're losing you there a little bit.
Your
connection is buffering a little.
It's difficult to. I'm sorry. What do we say? Where do I continue?
Sorry, we just lost you there a little bit, but I think I got the gist of your point, talking about. It's something everyone runs into everywhere when you're trying to build something. First step, everyone needs to work together, right? You need to have that kind of unified approach. And it's interesting, as you talked about Mexico, and this is different for some of the other countries that are joining us here today, right? There's not a shortage of pools, right? So it's a different problem, right? It's getting everyone to work together, to be on the same page. Carlos, I know as we turn to Puerto Rico, you'd like to see more facilities that maybe might get more people involved. You talked about the low number of participants. What's number one on your list to try and get water polo moving?
It's interesting. Okay, Alvarez, congratulations. I think this is my message. You need competition. You need championships. You also need consultant support. And when I say competition, it'd be great if kids can go to the Junior Olympics or Americas. We need to work together, because we have 100 players. You gotta have 10 teams. You gotta have 2 teams. In Salvador, and everybody would agree. But there's also separations with coaches saying, "No, I like it to do it this way." This is what I heard from Alvarez. Anyway, so consultant support to bring the sport up. You also mentioned rules. I agree 100%. Water polo has changed the rules probably 30 times since I was 10 years old. And by the time, and this is a real problem, by the time, even in the United States, by the time rules get changed and the national team level, my daughters, and when I played, whatever, know the rules, but by the time the referee that is in in St. Louis, Missouri, or in Mendoza, he doesn't know. He's referring to the old rules. So when they go back and compete, they get kicked out in 2 seconds or whatever. We need money, but my dream in Puerto Rico, we don't like pool. We lack pools because of the problems that we've had. And I think we don't lack pools. We lack competition. We lack that feeling that I grew up with, that you won a championship. We haven't had a league in 4 years or 5 years. We need competition. Competition is what it's uncomfortable. It's what makes you better. And I hope that if we get something from this, is that we get America united and Central America, and we compete in 5 different places or 4 different places. We centralize it, we go, keep it simple. So in my country, what do we need? We need a lot of players, but we need to be able to market, to get that kid to see a game, to see an international tournament, to see it like I did and see, wow, that is fun. You know, we don't have that. It's very, I call it the bicycle. We're in a bicycle, and you know, we just need more competition in my country, or somehow show it more via Zoom, via whatever. I don't know how, but we need more exposure. I hope I answer your question.
You did. No, this is, you hit on something that is, you know, a lot of these topics that you're discussing, even more established water polo countries are talking about the same things, right? They want more exposure for their sport. They want more competition, more gameplay. You mentioned competition. This is the whole reason, right? If you're going to train, and everyone here knows how challenging water polo is, if you're going to get that good to play water polo, you want to play against somebody else. You don't want to put all the work in to not lead to anything. Yanira and James, you talked about El Salvador possibly having that competition a couple of years ago and not working out. And those are the opportunities, right, to try and get your country's water polo program a bit on the map. And so when they're not there, you know, and I know, as you mentioned, you're not, you know, officially speaking on behalf of El Salvador water polo, but from someone who cares about the programs there, what are some of the things that, you know, you want to see done? What's number one? I know, Yanira, you mentioned opportunities for women, but is that number one? What else is out there?
Gosh, you know, in terms of the finances, pools, and more publicity, and I think the publicity comes from having a team and having the competition. You know, like Carlos was saying, you know, if a kid sees the game, then it's, you know, finds out what a wonderful game it is, or, you know, and that they could themselves, you know, play that. So I think you know, the publicity, I think it's more because as you all know, and throughout the world, the game is the sport. It's an elite sport, and in a country like El Salvador, it's even more so. You know, having access to that pool,
Or learning how to swim.
and or exactly, or you know, knowing how to swim, because that, you know, that comes hand in hand with polo. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everything Carlos said translates absolutely to the El Salvador scene. And it seems to me that it's actually a fairly simple situation. You need 2 things. You need more players to know that the game exists, that there are places where they can play. And in particular, you need kids to start earlier. So right now in El Salvador, we have a kind of a critical mass of players, and they tend to be at the youngest 16 or the oldest 18 or 19. And then once they're 20, that's it. There are no opportunities to play. As far as I know, there are no senior leagues. You don't play in college. So what we would like to see is have kids start much earlier, you know, like they do here. And when they're 10, they as long as they can swim, they can start playing. They'll develop a love for the sport, and they'll take, you know, they'll play until they're 18 or so, or maybe they'll go to the US and play here. But the problem is it's too limited, kind of a community of players we have right now. It's too small, and the age ranges are too limited. It's basically 16 to 18, and that's it. So we need kids to start earlier, and we need more people to become interested in the sport. And exactly what Carlos was saying would work very well, I think, in El Salvador.
This is a debate I think a lot of countries have in a lot of sports, when you think about the older age groups and what can be accomplished by, say, a national team or an Olympic team, there's a feeling, well, if one of those teams does well and they win a gold medal at some event, that will raise awareness of the sport and then everyone will want to do it. And then there's another school of thought, but if you just get kids involved early and get them playing the sport, they'll grow up to be the gold medalists. And then you won't have to have this amazing lightning in a bottle moment. And so I think that's the challenge for a lot of places is to start young and to have people involved. Facundo, I'll come back to Argentina. And as you talked about the sport, slowly, step by step, has been going in the right direction, but it's mostly a men's game. What else do you want to see to help water polo grow in Argentina?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally agree with Carlos. I mean, the external consultant from expert, and sometimes I think that we coaches have to be like more humble. In order to like be ready to absorb and learn from experts. So that's one of the key points in Argentina, at least. Competition really helped us a lot. In the last 10 years, we have developed this like 12 years ago, started a national league, and this helped a lot. And also regional tournaments, especially like focusing it on under 10, under 12, under 14. These kind of festivals and summer camps and these kind of training sessions together with tournaments or cups but trying to keep it like for the whole like season, 9 or 10 months were like, it was really helpful for us. But one of the things that I really, it's one of my dreams and I really think it's gonna help a lot is that sometimes, at least people here in Argentina, we normally complain about lack of money or financial situation. And it's not about money. Sometimes it depends a lot on a political, not individual efforts, but to create a program, focus on, and from my point of view, one of the key points is to like give the kids and the children like more opportunities to practice water polo. I guess maybe there are lots of pools, even if they are like shallow or narrow, or they are like not great facilities, which is one of the problems here in Argentina, but there are lots of pools. But the problem is like maybe in 1% or 2% of them, just you have the opportunity or the possibility to see and to know water polo. Nobody knows what the sport is about. So if you don't have an idea what is it about, it's not one of the options about like parents or the children to choose, among you have volleyball, basketball, football, but if they don't know what water polo is it about, probably that's we get stuck on it, because of that. So one of the things that really I think it's gonna help is try to introduce in this kind of programs for swimming coaches or teacher training college, physical education career at university or these kind of schools, is to provide the professors, the teachers, the instructors, their tools to introduce not only swimming skills, but like different aquatic activities, in order to like, okay, let's give them the possibility to choose among different ideas and activities, and not only about swimming or land typical sports. You know what I mean?
Totally. You have touched on a couple of things, and this is a common conversation in the United States too. You can't want to play something if you don't know it exists, right? So we can't say we'd love to have water polo in every 50 states in the U.S. when some of those states have never even seen it or only have a very distant knowledge of what it is. And it's the same thing here. Another thing that you brought up, and some of you have talked about as well, and Oliver talked about the kind of collaboration. Everywhere that water polo has grown in the U.S., say outside of California, you often hear about a person who moved to an area and they love water polo. They're a water polo person, and they become kind of like the water polo person in that area, right? Where they're the one that coaches it, because we come back now to coaches, right? You can't it's very hard to grow this if you don't have people that want to coach the sport and kind of grow the sport. I'll swing back to Oliver and talk about Mexico again. And when you were talking last, you were talking about kind of getting everyone to be on the same page and kind of work together. So how do you further that goal of getting everyone to be together, and what are some of the things that would help you make that happen so that everyone worked as one to try and make Mexico water polo better?
Well, it all starts with a good plan. I mean, the reason that right now the Mexican Federation and the authorities
You're cutting out a little bit again.
are listening to me
Closer.
is a plan for long. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit, but now
Is
you're
it
back. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I was saying that the first thing, I think the most important thing is to have a plan. You know, to have a plan. I don't know if it's the best plan, but at least it's a plan. For a very long time. People in Mexico have been working for objectives. So their own main goal is to win this one tournament that they do for smaller age groups. And like I said before, there's nothing for the seniors that people can see that someone's working, you know, that things are starting to happen, and everybody can take a part of it. You know, because from that, I look at it as starting from the top of the pyramid. You have to create something for young players to aspire. They want to get to. If they don't see a goal that's high enough, then it's like studying and quitting before in junior college. See, because you don't end your studies, and then it's just like an income players at an older age group. So the first thing is this: to get a good plan and to get everybody to be a part of it.
Sorry, you're breaking up there a little bit, Oliver. But
with it. I mean,
I think I picked up everything that you were talking about there. And just to kind of recap, it might have been a little tough to hear, but talking about having a plan, right? This is important for anything you're doing and anything in life, right? You need to have a plan to try and carry that out. You talked about having an opportunity. This was again something that many countries run into. Once you age out of a certain age group, what are the opportunities to keep people playing after you say turn 18, right? What else is out there to keep people engaged in the sport and playing it? If you think of even Masters water polo around the world that FINA hosts events, there's events hosted in other countries too, right? It's how to keep people engaged in that, and then it comes back, right, to kind of that more collaborative approach. Carlos, when we talk about Puerto Rico, right, there's nobody that I've ever met that has more passion for water polo than you, right? If you could kind of just will that out to everybody, the sport would be the most popular sport on earth, right? So how do you get people to want to live it the way that you live it? How do you get those water polo apostles, for lack of a better word, to kind of want to grow the sport around your country?
Well, I have to go back to competition.
Yeah.
I got into the sport because I saw San Jose State playing against Switzerland or something like that one time. And then New York Athletic Club during Christmas. I saw the game. So competition, but I will give you some examples that are happening. I'll have to give you this idea and to anybody else. Sorry if I'm advertising my daughter's 6'8", but I have been approached already by several other countries asking, can you help me to develop? And one of them is quite good. And they wanted to bring an outside coach. Oh, maybe you come, maybe we're looking for a kid. And I have seen this in South America. There's a Hungarian coach in Cuba. He came, he left, the sport did this. In Mexico, I don't know, I think it was Yugoslav or Hungarian, whatever, for 75, left, gone. So I think that the approach that we discussed earlier is to have consistency and competition. I think I have two things that I think is a good idea for water polo, an opportunity. One is now we have this type of communication that we could have experts like Tony and Maggie, and there's other people there, but that's my preference, and I'm involved with this, and help coach the coaches to learn water polo at a high level with a local flavor, okay? And two, I think I come back to tournaments and fun tournaments. Puerto Rican water polo, there not a lot of them, but we sure can put a party. We know how to party, and I can put a party. Every water polo player loves to party. So we also have one of the best beaches in the world. And beach volleyball, I think, is beach water polo is one of the best things that has happened to water polo. Everybody here, not everybody, most people have talked budget, money. Now, instead of 15 players or 13 players, well, 15 if you have 6 players. It's cheaper to travel. And it's more exciting. We can create exciting beach water polo. And that's what I'm trying to do. COVID, we're going to have something in November with Maggie and Tony in Puerto Rico. And this is something that, stay alert, we want to do that. I think beach volleyball has given a great example to even the NBA, to everybody, the growth of beach volleyball. Well, in Puerto Rico, there are hundreds of kids playing beach volleyball. So, and that is exposure. I will leave you with this thought. When you're walking around a restaurant, when you're walking in a town and you look inside a restaurant and there's nobody there, it doesn't matter if you have the best chef, you go, I'm not going to go there because there's nobody there. But if you have people in the pool, motion, etc., then you have a product. And then you can have promotion. And then you can show. But just imagine a beach water polo tournament in a beautiful beach in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, I don't know, in a lake, in Argentina, in El Salvador. I think it's magic. And this is the greatest opportunity that is in front of us. And we're the new world. Why not take advantage of this, and create this? I have a solution for whoever wants to get consistency with coaching with the highest level and contacts, but not to send a coach there, to coach the coaches. And, that's my plan. In Puerto Rico, there's a group doing a Water Polo International with about 10 teams or something like that. But I think that beach water polo is going to be a great tool for us if we learn how to use it. And before this is done, I have to say it, for USA, it would be great. It could help us. We can help them, Texas East and maybe California, if we are involved in some way that we can have competition, and because that's what it is. That's the answer. But I repeat, maybe Florida, Orlando, or Texas, those are easy places to go. And then we can decorate with nice places. Guadalajara, Jalisco is pretty cheap to fly to, There's Mexico City. Once this COVID thing leaves, that it will leave someday, I would love to see the sport explode. I hope I give you the answer.
That's great. The idea of beach water polo or open water polo. Well, we're talking about four countries with beautiful locations, right? So that already makes sense there. It does get you around that facility. This guy's ready to go right now. He's got the water polo.
This thing floating in a beautiful Caribbean water, combined with beach volleyball, beach woman volleyball, and beach woman water polo. And man, are you kidding me? With a local beer? I'm not going to mention Corona. Sorry, Mexico. But I don't know.
We're about 20 minutes away from being sold an all-inclusive vacation from Carlos here to Puerto Rico. So if you just,
I'm ready to go. You guys
Just
let me
stay on the
know.
call afterwards. He'll set you up with the flight and a hotel and everything. But that is a great equalizer when you don't have facilities or you want to blend. Because in the U.S. they call it the AVP, right? Beach volleyball. It's been a great way to mix that kind of beach experience with competition. So you're having fun in this tropical location, but you're also there to watch a competition or to play a competition. We've seen open water polo grow in the U.S. recently, as Carlos talked about, a chance for it to kind of rise up in other areas as well. I'll go back to El Salvador, Yanira and James, and trying to find people in that area, because another thing that Carlos touched on, it's great to have a bunch of people play water polo, but then who's going to coach them, right? You think about any developing town or city anywhere, once a certain place hits a number of people, one of the first thoughts is, can we open a school here, right? Because you need someone to teach all of these people. And it's the same thing in water polo. So how do you get those people, the adults, to be invested in teaching the next generation in El Salvador how to play water polo?
Let me start. What we would ideally love to see happen is have kind of a traffic of players between El Salvador and the US, and ideally back to El Salvador. One of the things we had planned this summer before the COVID crisis was to actually bring a group of girls, 18-year-olds, to play club polo all summer in the US, and ideally play in JOs, which have been happening around about now. And then have them love their experience, love the quality of play, learn new skills, and come back as ambassadors for the sport. And then ideally have some players from the US come down to El Salvador if they can overcome their misgivings about, things that are happening in El Salvador. And now we kind of establish that two-way traffic. And this could apply just as easily to coaches as well. And you're right, there is an absolute dearth of coaches in El Salvador, coaches that are at the national level. There's one very good coach who coached I think in Florida, who's in charge of the women's team, and he has a couple of assistants. But honestly, I don't think there are probably more than a dozen, probably less than that actually. Really top quality coaches. But there are plenty of people who could become good quality coaches by coming to the US. And as I said, spending a summer with a high-level club team like Diablo is a team that we're affiliated with here in the US. And as I said, have them bring people back to El Salvador to give coaching clinics, or stay a week and play with the team and so on. I think that kind of two-way traffic, I think, would be immensely beneficial to the country. Anyway, sort of monopolizing that.
No, that was my idea. Yes.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Carlos talked about, right? Someone to teach the teachers, so that when they're the ones that stay behind, because that's where they live, they're able to help grow it a little bit further. We'll go back to Argentina, and Facundo, you talked about, and this is a classic thing that comes up in the U.S., where people will say, tell us about the roster on the national team, and it's mostly a California roster, and they'll say it's a very big country. Why is it only everyone from California? You talked about Argentina. There's maybe two areas that play the sport a lot, and then a couple of other areas that play it a little bit. How do you get a bigger country like yours to have more people play in more areas?
Yeah, that's a big question, Greg. I mean, actually, in Argentina, situation is quite particular because, all of you guys probably understand me. In Latin American countries, most of us has like a huge cities such as Sao Paulo, Rio, or Mexico City, or Buenos Aires, with maybe 20, 15 millions. And then lots of small places where there are like no facilities, and sometimes, but here there are like a lot of cities that medium size that could have done something, but instead they're like kind of isolated and so far away from Buenos Aires and Rosario. That's one of the critical points for us. I have been talking like 2 weeks ago with some of the US water polo responsibles. They were like really kind and helpful for me. This was a conversation about how to develop the water polo in different areas. As I getting to know with the reality in the US, that California is a key point, and the rest of the American places are like quite different in terms of amount of players, level competition, and so on. So we have the same problem in Argentina, focused in 2 cities instead. They give me a little bit of some advices about how to create that. But I think one of the most important things that try to bring some people there just to teach local instructors, coaches, physical education career and teachers and people around there. Not only like, I mean, to create the whole environment, to create local competition, because there were like some isolated cases where, for example, in Mendoza or some cities with a good generation of players, but they really, it was really tough for them to face or deal with the costs of for example, to get a national team, they're not to play the national league, you know, home and abroad, and just fly or travel for such a long trip. So in order to avoid this, it's really important for us to create like 3 or 4 small community of water polo up north or in the south. Or I think in Argentina, the next goal or challenge in terms of developing a new area is in Córdoba, which is a pretty curious case because it's the 2nd largest city in Argentina, but it's definitely #1 in history in swimming. All Olympic swimmers in the whole history in Argentina and the best nowadays came from that city. And there is a lot of tradition in swimming, but although there is not even one single water polo team in the whole 4 million city, you know? So it's a pity, and we are like trying to figure out a way to solve it. But I think that the way to do that is just to help with maybe bringing coaches and instructors and try to promote, to create 3 or 4 or 5 small schools, more than clubs, you know, like for under 10, under 11, under 12, 13, 14, to start to try to grow out from the, I mean, go on top, but starting by the, how can I say that?
Age.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Great. Totally agree. I think many people have had to navigate swimmers becoming water polo players. And if it's a city of 4 million people and they enjoy swimming, that seems like there's got to be a few water polo people in that city and a great chance to kind of get some people involved in the sport. This has been a great conversation. Just as we start to wind down here, talking about growing water polo in the Americas. Appreciate these fine people from and representing and having a passion for Mexico, Puerto Rico, Argentina, and El Salvador joining us. I just want to go around one more time. Let's kind of end on a positive. Things go where you want them to go. Let's look maybe 5 years down the road here, and I'll start back with Mexico. You know, you've talked a lot about that collaboration, Oliver, getting people together. If you're able to make this progress you want to make, what does Mexico water polo look like in 5 years, maybe 10 years down the road?
Well, first of all, I hope that my internet doesn't close me down right now again. I hope it works fine. The first thing, where I see us in 5 years, if everything works out correctly, I think, well, my wish is to make Mexico the power, the power team, the power country in the zone, in Central America especially. I wish, I believe that we can be contending for the gold medal every 4 years in the Central American Games, and starting to compete in the semifinals in the Pan Am Games. After that, my wish is to keep sending the team to the Olympic qualification tournament and go on from there. Local, this is for the national team. Locally, I see a sort of a league that we will be playing several times a year, at least 5 times a year, where people and the level is going to be continually rising, because you have to compete. You're going to start to compete against each other. And this brings excitement, this brings preparation, this brings awareness, this brings exposure, this brings the attention of media, of sponsors. So it also has to be linked with a social bond. By this I mean that water polo is a discipline that can save your life eventually. When we all like to swim, we all like to go to the beach, we all like to enjoy ourselves in water, you know, and to be able to swim and to have this ability that water polo players have, I think it's a thing that has to be, I think it can be usable for every country, everywhere in the world, this is the way water polo has to be developed and taught, because it really is a very helpful tool, even if you play at a professional level or not. So what I see is this, a structured competitive system, more water polo players getting developed. Coaches will have to be better prepared for that, because if you don't compete, if you don't win or get a good result every year or every 2 months, which is the plan, then some things will have to change. And the people on top and the people that make the decisions will have to take the decisions. So if you want to win, if you want to really compete, you're going to have to be better every day. So this is where I see ourselves. And I think eventually, with more time, this is a long-term plan. Hopefully we can have a better structured league where we can play not every 2 months, or maybe every weekend, like in Europe you do it, or maybe start trying to involve schools, colleges, to get a system similar like you have in the USA, which I think is phenomenal, because you give this opportunity to kids, maybe not to be professional players, but to get a degree and to make a life out of themselves. So it can go either way. Hopefully it can go both ways, But in the immediate future, in 5 years, I think that we can make this competition system a reality. I can think we can make it work, and like everybody has said, exposure, publicity will just come by itself.
Well, and you hit on the idea of water polo can really be a life-saving practice, right? If you're strong enough to play water polo, you are strong in the water, and that's not a bad thing for anyone to have, right? Whether you're in a lake, a pool, the ocean, wherever you might be, and that's what we talk about, especially in the U.S. as far as getting kids involved. It's a great way to build team skills, but also be strong in the water. So that, you mentioned the league, the national team. Really comprehensive stuff there, but all things that would really raise the profile. So really like that. I really appreciate that. Carlos, I'll swing to you. In Puerto Rico, you look 5-10 years down the road. What does that look like, best case scenario?
I start local, and then I'm going to go global or to America, because that's my dream. First, I like Puerto Rico to be the center of excellence for beach, fun, water polo. A lot of fun, great locations, etc. 2, I would love to see Americas working together with USA and Canada, the whole America. Even though USA says America, we are America. And compete, create an all-American team. The best guys from Mexico, the best guys from El Salvador, the best guy from Argentina, the best guy from Colombia, compete. Bring that into the centers, whatever we decide to do. Puerto Rico, we would love to be in that competition for the gold medal in that Central American Games, which is for Mexico and Puerto Rico and the Central American. That's our Olympics. That's really that's our goal. But I really would love to be the center of excellence on helping the rest of South America, building a bridge with the United States, which is far ahead from us with about 50,000 members in USA Water Polo. USA Water Polo has done a tremendous job, and I congratulate you for doing that. USA Water Polo, thank you very much for even involving us in this START conversation that and Michael Graff and everybody know that I've been pushing for. So I would like it to be a fun place, to make it fun, because good things happen when you're having fun. So that's my point.
That's great. And we'll go to Yanira and James. El Salvador, everything goes well the next 5 or 10 years. What does that look like?
Let's deal first with the international competition. And I think here we have to be realistic. I think both of us will be more than happy if El Salvador was simply able to field a team in CESEC and the Pan American Games. Doesn't matter how we do, as long as every year we're putting out a team and a team is playing in the tournament. Ideally a men's and a women's team, but that may be too much to hope for. I think we would be happy if just there were the possibility of sending team consistently to all of these tournaments. I think we'd be very happy if we saw that. I think with respect to El Salvador internally, I think we would like to see a situation where, you know, kids, as I mentioned earlier, picking up the game at 10 and playing right through until they're 18 and maybe even longer than that. And that's going to require more teams, a more organized structure, and really a better internal advertising of the sport. But I think we'd be ecstatic if, you know, there was something kind of a microcosm of the US in El Salvador 10 years from now, where there are plenty of kids that are taking it up, you know, when they're 10, just after they learn to swim, and playing right through until they're 18. And I think my personal dream would be that out there's a player in El Salvador who's not even playing right now that will get on the radar screen of a US college coach and will be offered a scholarship. Even if it's a D3 scholarship, that's fine. Just somebody who's learned his or her polo exclusively in El Salvador comes to the US and becomes a college player. Whether or not that'll happen, who knows? But I think that would be my personal dream. Anyway, sorry, your comment?
Well, for me, it would be to increase the participation of women in the sport. So currently, the team is really small, and my hope is that within the next 5 years, we could have, you know, 5 teams, and so they can compete among themselves. So, yeah.
Excellent. You know, and even though we're talking about different sized goals, right? Whether it's to win medals or it's just to have a team that competes regularly, right? This is where we talk, and I talk about this often in the US, right? Like, they're all valid and they're all important goals. So even if they feel small or not as big as what someone else is working on, when you're trying to grow a sport like this, where even in the place where it's the biggest deal, if you go to maybe Hungary or Serbia or something like that, right, where it's their favorite sport, it's still fighting to be recognized among a soccer or a basketball, right? So the more that we're all collectively appreciative of these goals, the better it is for the sport, regardless of how big or small the goal might seem to somewhere else. And then I'll close out with Facundo in Argentina. 5-10 years, things are going better. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, there are, like, as you mentioned, there are like 2 main points. One of them probably is like the results or the national team, or the ideas to set the goals. Our main tournament is in 2023 in Santiago de Chile, the Pan American Games. The male team was fighting for the medal. I mean, again, in the top 4 after more than 55 years in the last 2 ones, in Toronto and in Lima also. Mm-hmm. So they're like, keep going and try to figure out a way to like make the last step to reach the level of the top 3. I mean, of course, the US in top by far, but then Canada and Brazil, and they're like getting closer, you know. And on the female side, I think we have been working hard with these girls, group of girls, youth and juniors. In the last 3 or 4, we got qualified for the World Championship and 4th place in the Pan American Games. So probably it's gonna be the same in the next 5 or 10 years with the female. I mean, try to figure out a way to start to jump into the top 4 in the continent, you know. But the most important one is that to develop and promote and make it famous, between commas, or try to like find a way to make it more popular, which is the main reason I talked to John Abdul to give me some piece of advice, who was really kind to me. And as Carlos mentioned before, competing a lot and trying to like help each other among the different countries in America is really useful, and it's a key point. I mean, from my personal experience as a coach with the female national team in the last 4 years, we have been training together twice a year, probably in the last 4 years with Brazil, both in Brazil and in Argentina. They came, we went there, and thank you again. If I have the possibility, thank you a lot to Ricardo Acevedo, because he really helped us to develop this kind of twin and double feedback, work with our Brazil coaches and girls, and we become like really close, and this really helped us both to develop and grow up our level. So probably we have to figure out a way to create kind of similar strategy in the by areas and region to make this quality jump, because sometimes it's not only about the amount of work, but focusing it and try to figure out a way to like make a quality jump in terms of how good and which way you are doing this kind of stuff. But I usually my DNA is like quite positive, and I think we are on a good path, in a good way. Just started for the first time in our history the coaches school, last month in Buenos Aires and Rosario both, which is a key point also for our development. And I think we're like reaching these goals in maybe 10 or 5 or 12 years, but we are on the road,
That's great. And really, really important stuff shared from everyone here. It's interesting, regardless of where these 4 countries are at, you saw some common themes, right? Collaboration, opportunity for competition, raising awareness about the sport. That was across the board. I think things everyone hit on going forward. And we know that there's a lot more work to be done. This is just the tip of the iceberg, if you will, on what everyone's trying to do in these countries. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. This will be available as well on demand on the USA Water Polo YouTube page. Thanks to our friends here from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Argentina, El Salvador. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to talk about water polo in your favorite places. Thanks so much.